The rain didn't fall that night, it attacked. Sheets of water slammed against the stone walls of the castle. Thunder cracked so close it shook the chandeliers, and the sky pulsed with veins of violet lightning that lit up the halls like the breath of some old god. The storm was violent, feral, magnificent. And for once, it gave Lyra cover. Her heart pounded against her ribs as she ran barefoot through the corridor, the hem of her nightgown soaked and clinging to her legs. The guards were distracted. The magic wards flickered. The storm was chaos, and in chaos, she finally had a chance to vanish. Every step was a betrayal. Every breath felt like defiance. She had never been this far without permission, but she had stopped asking for it. For 17 years, Lyra had lived like a ghost in her own home. Watched, caged, dismissed. Useless, they called her. A disappointment. In a royal bloodline bursting with magic, telepaths, seers, elementalists, she had none. Not a spark. Not a flicker. Her father, King Dareth, had deemed her a failure the moment her 7th birthday passed without ceremony. A princess with no power is no princess at all, he had said. So they locked her behind stone and shame and silence. She had been groomed not to rule, but to obey, to smile, to apologize for the space she took. But tonight, the wind was screaming her name, and she answered. The moment her bare feet hit the wet stone of the outer courtyard, she felt the bite of cold and freedom collide in her chest. Lightning lit up the world for a second, just enough for her to see the massive gate, guards running in panic toward the opposite wall to handle the damage. She ran. Past stables. Past the fountains. Past the statues of ancestors who had all been blessed with power she would never know. Love what you've seen so far and want to help me keep creating these awesome stories on this channel? Then subscribe and hit the bell. Your subscription supports the channel and makes sure you get more exciting stories. She was nothing to them. But the nothing girl was running now, fast and wild. Into the storm. Into the woods. Into herself. The forest hit her like a wall. Rain turned to needles. Branches clawed at her skin. Her breath came in ragged sobs, her body screaming in pain and fear, but she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. She didn't know how far she ran before she collapsed. Mud swallowed her knees, roots tore at her arms, and the cold seeped into her bones like poison. She curled into herself, blood mixing with rain, shaking, blinking up at a sky that didn't care if she lived or died. She closed her eyes and let go. The last thing she remembered was the scent of pine and earth and something floral. Then darkness. She woke to whispers. Foreign, melodic, sharp and soft all at once. Not human. Not harsh. The voices didn't argue, they sang. Lyra opened her eyes and found herself wrapped in furs, lying inside a tent that glowed with an inner light. The air smelled of lavender and smoke. Her body ached, but it was clean warm. Her wounds bandaged. She tried to sit up, but a hand stopped her. Easy, a voice said. Low. Commanding. Female. Lyra's breath hitched. She looked up. The woman standing over her was tall, silver-haired, with skin like moonlight and eyes the color of deep moss. She was dressed in armor that shimmered like it had been woven from starlight and metal. Her presence didn't just fill the room. It bent it. Who? Lyra croaked, her voice like broken glass. Who are you? I am Talia, the woman said. Queen of the elven realm of Alisari. You're in my lands now. Elves. Real elves. Not the fairy tale stories her tutors had told her. Wild, violent, untrustworthy. No. This woman wasn't a fantasy. She was real. Grounded. Terrifying. Beautiful. You were found near the river, Talia continued. Half dead. Covered in royal silk and blood. Your ring bore the crest of House Dareth. Lyra swallowed. I ran away. Clearly. Are you going to send me back? Talia tilted her head. Do you want to go back? Lyra's eyes filled before she could stop them. No, then you won't. The words were simple. Firm. As if it was that easy to sever a lifetime of chains. You're not afraid of the king? I fear no man. Lyra believed her. Every word. Talia turned away and spoke in Elvish to someone outside the tent. Lyra caught a few soft tones, a question, a command, a warning. When she turned back, there was something unreadable in her expression. You can stay, but you will earn it. We do not keep pets here. If you want refuge, you will fight for it. I've never fought, Lyra said. Then learn. I don't have magic. Talia stepped closer, crouching in front of her. We'll see. That night, Lyra lay awake, staring at the roof of the tent. Her body hurt, but her chest burned with something new. Hope. She thought of Talia's voice. Her eyes. The way she said Lyra's name like it didn't mean shame. She didn't know what the queen saw in her, but it was more than she'd ever been allowed to see in herself. And God's help her, she wanted more. The next day, she was given clothes, food, space to breathe. The elven warriors didn't look at her like a broken thing. They looked at her like a question waiting to be answered. And Talia watched her, always from a distance, always silent. But Lyra felt it, the weight of her gaze, the flicker of interest. She started training. Slow, awkward, laughable, even. But she didn't stop. Because every time her arms shook, every time she failed to hold a bow or collapsed after a spell that fizzled out in her palms, Talia was there, watching, measuring, waiting. And Lyra didn't want to impress her because she was queen. She wanted to impress her because she made Lyra feel real. Days passed, then weeks. And still, she couldn't touch magic. But she was faster, stronger, more open. The forest didn't terrify her anymore. The trees whispered secrets, and she listened. One night, while gathering water near the falls, she heard movement. Not behind her, in front. She turned. Talia stood there, arms folded, cloak pulled back, moonlight casting her in silver and power. You're not afraid anymore, she said. Of you. Lyra whispered. Never. Talia stepped closer. You still don't feel the magic? No, I do, Talia said softly. It's around you, beneath your skin. But it's quiet. Sleeping. Like you were. Lyra's breath caught. Then how do I wake it? Talia leaned in. You let go of the voice that told you you never had it. That voice was my father. Then kill him, she said, voice like fire. Not with blades. With truth. Lyra nodded, throat tight. She stepped forward. They were close now. Too close. She looked up at the elven queen, her heart crashing into her ribs. Why are you helping me? Because you are not weak. You were made to believe you were. There's a difference. How do you know? Talia's eyes darkened. Because I was too. For a moment, the world faded. And Lyra did something reckless. She reached for Talia's hand. And the queen didn't pull away. Days grew longer, and so did the way Talia's eyes lingered on her. Lyra noticed it even when Talia said nothing, especially when she said nothing. The queen of the elven realm carried herself like someone carved from stone and stormlight, but there was something softer in the way her gaze brushed across Lyra's mouth when she spoke, in the way her voice shifted, barely but always, when Lyra touched her arm, even by accident. The others didn't see it. Or if they did, they said nothing. Elves were private by nature, and their queen was sacred. Distant. Unreachable. But Lyra had begun to notice things. The way Talia always arrived just before training ended. The way she only sparred with the most experienced warriors, until one evening, she called Lyra's name. You'll train with me, Talia said. The world slowed. Lyra nodded, throat dry, and stepped into the circle. Their hands met first, palms pressed together, a traditional elven stance. Talia's skin was cooler than Lyra expected, her touch steadier. Lyra's pulse roared in her ears. They moved together, slowly, step by step, Talia guiding, Lyra following, bodies close but never touching more than required. Stop anticipating me, Talia said, voice low. You're reading my movement, not your instinct. My instinct is to be near you, Lyra said before she could stop herself. Talia's lips twitched, something between a warning and a smile. Then you must learn to separate instinct from distraction. You're both. Talia stilled, just for a breath. But it was enough. Again, she said, and this time her strike came fast. Lyra blocked, barely. Again, again. They danced like that. Strike, parry, breath, ache, until Lyra was panting, sweat running down her spine, arms trembling. Then Talia's hand brushed against her waist. Just a correction. Just a move. But it lit a fire in Lyra's stomach so strong she nearly lost her balance. You feel it, Talia said. The magic. What? It stirs when you fight me. Lyra's heart pounded. Is that bad? It's real. That night, Lyra didn't sleep. She sat by the river, fingers dipped into the cold water, eyes staring into the reflection that didn't look like a princess anymore. She had muscle now. Calluses. Scars. She had magic in her blood and heat in her chest that wouldn't die. She thought about Talia's hand, her voice, her mouth. What would it feel like to touch her without reason? Without instruction? Just because she wanted to? The next day, the forest changed. It was small at first, leaves moving when there was no wind. The animals watching her longer than usual. And the trees, always whispering. They grew louder when she walked by. The elven warriors said little, but she caught the way they looked at her when she passed. Like she was something blooming. Or breaking. Talia summoned her again at dusk. This time, not to train. Sit, the queen said, and Lyra obeyed, folding her legs beneath her on the mat inside Talia's tent. There is something growing inside you. Magic. Raw. You need to channel it before it consumes you. How? Talia leaned forward. Close your eyes. Lyra obeyed. Breathe. Think of the storm that freed you. What did it feel like? Cold. Wild. Angry. And what did you feel? Alive. Hold on to that. Lyra breathed in. And the room shifted. Wind curled around her. Her skin tingled. Magic bloomed behind her ribs, rising like heat, burning. Too fast. It hurts. Good, Talia said. Let it. Let it move through you. Lyra cried out. Light burst from her palms, pale gold and laced with heat. Talia touched her shoulder, and everything snapped back. The room stilled. The wind died. Lyra collapsed, gasping. What was that? A glimpse of your power, Talia said. Unshaped, but not broken. I thought I had none. You were taught to suppress it. Now it wants out. What do I do? You stay close to me. Lyra looked up. Why? Because I've seen what you can become. And I want to see it again. That night, Talia walked her back to her tent. Neither of them spoke. But when they reached the doorway, Lyra turned. Talia, the queen, paused. Yes. Do you want me here? Or are you just helping a cause? Talia's expression didn't change, but her voice softened. You're not a cause. You're a reckoning. Then she walked away. Lyra's knees almost gave out. The next morning, during weapons training, she shattered a target with a single scream. No touch. No spell. Just fury. Power. The others backed away. Talia stepped closer. Control it, she said. Not yet, Lyra answered. Let me feel it. And Talia didn't stop her. The week that followed was a blur of magic and exhaustion. Lyra woke before dawn, meditated with Talia beneath trees older than any human empire. She learned to bend fire, to speak to the wind, to pull water from the air. The earth itself responded to her footsteps now. But nothing compared to the way her body responded to Talia. The way her magic swelled when Talia whispered her name. You're still holding back, Talia said one evening. From what? From me. The words hung in the air. Lyra stepped forward. You scare me. Because I'm powerful? Because I want you. Talia exhaled slowly. We are not equals, Lyra. Then make me one. You're human. I am not. Does your blood define your heart? No, then don't hide behind it. Silence. Then Talia reached out and brushed a lock of hair behind Lyra's ear. You burn too bright, she said. Then let me set you on fire. That night, they didn't touch. Not yet. But when Talia left, her fingers grazed Lyra's wrist, and the spark that followed nearly brought Lyra to her knees. She didn't sleep. She lay awake, aching, trembling, alive. In the morning, the sky turned red. Elven scouts returned breathless. Humans, they said. In the trees. Talia looked at Lyra. Your father has sent them. For me? For his property. I'm not his. No, Talia said, eyes blazing. You're mine. And Lyra didn't flinch. The trees whispered of war. The wind carried it, sharp and heavy, brushing against Lyra's skin like a warning. Elven scouts returned each day with grimmer news. Human soldiers had crossed the border. Not a scouting party. Not a diplomatic force.
An army.
They bear the royal crest, one scout said, kneeling before Talia. And the same colors worn by Dareth's knights. They've set up camp 2 valleys north of the river. Less than 2 days' ride from Vallisari. Lyra stood at the edge of the war council, her hands clenched, her stomach twisting. They've come for me. Talia didn't look at her. They've come for blood. Then let me stop this, Lyra said, stepping forward. Let me speak to them. No. Talia snapped, voice low and sharp. You are not a bargaining chip. I'm the reason they're here. You are not responsible for your father's cruelty. I'm the reason your people are in danger. You're the reason I'm willing to fight. That silenced the room. Talia turned slowly, her eyes locked on Lyra, and for a moment there was no war, no council, no danger. Only that gaze, filled with something wild and protective and terrifyingly tender. You're not going anywhere near that camp, she said. You're mine now. Lyra's breath caught.
She didn't argue.
That night, she wandered through the moonlit gardens behind the keep, her body aching from training, her chest aching from something worse. She hadn't meant to fall in love. Not with a queen. Not with an elf. Not with someone who had fought every second of her life just to stay free. And yet here she was, haunted by the shape of Talia's hands, by the way she said her name like it wasn't a curse. Lyra sat on the stone bench near the glowing tree, pressing her palm against its warm bark. Tell me what I'm supposed to do, she whispered. Tell me how to keep her. You don't have to ask the trees, a voice said behind her. You can ask me. Lyra turned. Talia stood there, cloaked in black and silver, hair loose for once, falling over her shoulders like silk. She looked less like a queen and more like a memory. Or a dream. I didn't think you'd come, Lyra said. I always come when you call. I didn't call. You didn't have to. Talia stepped closer. You've been quiet. There's a war coming. There's always a war coming. You're not afraid? Of death?
No.
Then what do you fear? Wanting things I can't have. Me? Talia didn't answer. You think I'm weak, Lyra said. Because I don't want bloodshed. I think you're brave, Talia replied. Because you still believe in mercy. Even for him? Especially for him. Because forgiveness takes more strength than vengeance. Then why won't you let me try? Because if they take you, I will burn every kingdom to the ground. Lyra's breath caught. You shouldn't say things like that. Why? Because I believe you. You should. Talia stepped closer. Their hands brushed. And for the first time, neither of them moved away. Do you regret it? Lyra whispered. Saving me? No, Talia said. My only regret is not touching you sooner. That broke something open. Lyra reached for her, trembling, heart racing, and when Talia didn't stop her, when she leaned into the touch like it hurt to be without it, Lyra whispered, Then don't wait anymore. Talia's lips were colder than she expected, but her kiss was not. It was fire. Surrender. An unspoken vow. Their mouths met like they had waited lifetimes for permission. Lyra clutched at her armor, pulling her closer, and Talia growled softly against her lips, hands finding Lyra's waist, her jaw, her hair. When they finally broke apart, breathless, Talia whispered, We are not safe. We were never safe. They'll say I corrupted you. You saved me. They'll say you're not fit to rule. to be respected. I don't want a throne. I want you. Then take me. That night, they did not sleep. Talia's room was cold, but their bodies were warm. There were no titles, no history, just skin,
Hands. Breath.
firelight flickering across scars and silences. Talia worshipped her like she was something sacred. Lyra held her like she was something rare. And when it was over, they didn't speak. They didn't need to. The next morning, the world returned.
Loud.
Demanding. Terrible. A message, the scout said. From King Dareth himself. He demands the return of his daughter. Or war. Talia's eyes burned. He never deserved to call her that. What should we reply? The scout asked. Talia turned to Lyra. That depends on you. Lyra stood tall. Tell him he never owned me. And if he tries to take me again, he'll see what his defective daughter has become. The room went still. Talia smiled. As you command, my heart. The message was sent. The army did not retreat. Instead, they marched faster. Closer. Days blurred. Weapons sharpened. Wards strengthened. The elves prepared for blood. And Lyra trained like something had been lit inside her. Magic flowed through her now, not wild, not chaotic, but focused.
Deadly.
She could hold fire in her palm, call wind with a word, speak to the roots beneath the forest, and they obeyed. She was no longer powerless. She was no longer property. She was Talia's. And Talia, God's help her, was hers. One night, just before the final sunrise before battle, Lyra lay beside her, tracing the curve of her shoulder. If I die, you won't. But if I do, then I'll follow, Talia whispered. No, Lyra said, firm. You'll live. You'll carry me in everything you do. Because I will not let my death become your cage. Don't talk like this. Then kiss me. Talia did, like it was the last thing she'd ever do. And when morning came, and the horn sounded, and the soldiers lined the trees, Lyra stood in armor of gold and emerald, her hair braided with flamavine, her eyes calm. She stepped beside Talia and faced the army that had once claimed her. And she smiled. Let them come, she whispered. Let them see what I am now. And Talia, voice low and sure, said, let them learn what happens when they try to steal what belongs to me. The war began before the sun had fully risen. Mist curled around the roots of the ancient forest as if the trees themselves were holding their breath. Elven warriors stood in silence, weapons drawn, eyes glowing faintly with enchantments woven through years of battle. At the front stood Talia, unflinching, her silver armor catching the pale light, her black cloak rippling behind her like the shadow of something divine. Beside her, Lyra. Not a princess in silk, not a girl in hiding. A warrior, dressed in woven leather laced with forest thread, her hair pulled back, her hands wrapped, her veins buzzing with magic she could finally call her own. She stood with the woman she loved, facing the army that had once called her a mistake. They're still assembling, a scout whispered. Their formation is arrogant, exposed. Of course it is, Talia muttered. They've never fought elves. They've only killed each other. Lyra's jaw clenched. She could see them now, rows of soldiers in metal too heavy, spells too crude, banners held high as if ceremony could protect them. And at the center, on a white horse draped in red, her father, King Dareth. Even from a distance, she could see the disgust etched into his face when he spotted her. His mouth moved, barking orders. And suddenly, a voice echoed through the forest, not magical, but booming, carried by some human device. Return the princess, it said, and we will spare the rest. Elven archers laughed under their breath. Talia didn't flinch. She turned to Lyra. Do you want to answer him? Yes, Lyra said. She stepped forward. Her magic rose with her voice, amplifying it, shaping it. I am not your prisoner anymore. I am not your pawn. I am not your shame. I am not yours. The forest trembled with her words. Even the wind seemed to pause. Across the valley, Dareth stood still. Then his hand rose. And the horns blew. They were coming. Hold the line, Talia commanded. Elven blades lifted in unison. Shields locked. Magic hummed through the roots of the forest, ready to respond. Lyra reached for the earth and felt it answer. Her power flowed through her like a tide, warm, wild, waiting to be unleashed. Then they clashed. The humans stormed the treeline with brute force and blunted enchantments, but the elves moved like water, fast and silent and unyielding. Steel met spell. Flesh met flame. Screams tore the silence. Lyra fought beside Talia, her hands alive with light. She cast barriers, deflected arrows, summoned bursts of wind that knocked enemies off their feet. For the first time, her power was not a question. It was a weapon. Behind you, Talia shouted. Lyra turned just in time to see a knight charging, blade raised. Her hand lifted instinctively. Roots exploded from the ground, wrapping around him, pulling him down like the forest itself had chosen sides. You're starting to show off, Talia murmured. Trying to impress you, Lyra said between breaths. It's working. Then the trees shook. A flash of light. And suddenly, silence. Lyra turned. The battlefield cleared in a circle. Standing within it was Dareth, sword drawn, cloak torn, magic crackling around him. Lyra, he said. Come here. Now. No, you've been poisoned by these creatures. You chained me before they ever touched me. You're my daughter. You made me a prisoner. You made me nothing. You're a disgrace to our blood. Then watch me rewrite it. He lunged. Magic lashed out in a storm of red and silver. Lyra raised both hands. Their power collided in midair, screaming against each other, sparks flying, branches snapping. Lyra gritted her teeth. Dareth was stronger. Trained. Merciless. But she had something he didn't. A reason to fight. Behind her, she felt Talia's presence. A steady flame. A tether. You'll never win this, Dareth spat. You're broken. No, Lyra whispered. You just never let me be whole. And then she dropped her guard, not to surrender, but to let him believe he'd won. When he stepped closer, blade raised, Lyra reached for the roots beneath his feet and pulled. The earth opened. He stumbled. She rose. And struck. A burst of light. His sword flew from his hand. He fell. Hard. Groaning. Defeated. Lyra stood over him, her magic still burning in her chest. I could kill you, she said. I should. Then do it, he hissed. Show them what you really are. She leaned down, her face inches from his. I'm not a killer. I'm not you. Then she turned her back on him, the greatest defiance she could offer. Retreat, she said to the human soldiers. Or fall. And they did. One by one, they dropped weapons, raised hands, fled into the trees. Talia stood at her side, proud, breathless, blood on her cheek. You won, she said. We did, Lyra whispered. Then her legs gave out. Talia caught her, held her, carried her away from the smoke and ash, back into the heart of Valsari. The war was over. The battle, at least. That night, Lyra lay in Talia's bed, wrapped in furs and silence. Her body ached, but her heart did not. You saved them, Talia said. You saved us all. I saved myself, Lyra murmured. Finally. Talia touched her cheek. You're not afraid of what comes next. No, Lyra said. Because I'm not facing it alone. No, Talia echoed, voice soft. You never were. And in the quiet, beneath the healing songs of the forest, Lyra pulled her close and kissed her like she was no longer running, like she'd finally arrived, like home had been a person all along. The silence after war is the strangest sound. It hums, heavy and strange, like the air doesn't know what to do without screams and steel. Valsari stood untouched in some places, bruised in others. The trees leaned inward as if mourning. The warriors cleaned blood from their blades with reverent care. And in the heart of the forest, Lyra walked freely, no longer hidden, no longer hunted. She was no longer the girl who had run through the rain like a ghost.
Now, even the roots shifted when she passed.
The wind paused for her. Something in her had changed. Something had awakened. But it was quiet.
For now.
Talia watched it all with the stillness of someone who had seen peace before, but never let herself believe in it. She stood beside Lyra at every ceremony, at every meeting, at every quiet moment that threatened to drown them in memory. They didn't talk much about the war. Or about Dareth. He had been taken prisoner, kept deep within the mountain, his magic bound. But Lyra didn't ask to see him. She had nothing left to say. Her past no longer needed an audience. Instead, she focused on the future, on rebuilding, learning, breathing without flinching. On Talia. The nights grew softer. They fell into rhythm, into touch, into each other. They kissed without fear now. They reached for each other like people who had nearly lost everything. Lyra learned the shape of Talia's scars. Talia learned the map of Lyra's breath. But the peace was not perfect, because something still stirred in Lyra's chest. A warmth. A pressure. Not dangerous, but different. "You feel it too, don't you?" she whispered one morning, her fingers brushing the moss beneath the sacred tree. Talia stood nearby, eyes narrowed. "Yes. It's not my magic. Not the same kind. It's older." "Have you ever felt it before?" "Once," Talia said. "Centuries ago, when the veil between realms thinned." "What does it mean?" "That you are more than what they told you. More than what even I believed." Lyra pressed her hand to the tree. It pulsed faintly beneath her skin. "Sometimes I dream things," she said. "Places I've never seen. Voices I don't know. They're calling to me. Do they frighten you?"
"No. They sound like me."
Talia watched her, lips pressed tight. "We should speak with the elders." "Will they understand?" "They'll try." But the moment Lyra entered the elders' chamber, something shifted. The air turned thick. The flame in the center of the room hissed. One of the elders, a woman with skin like bark and eyes like smoke, staggered back. "She is marked," she whispered. "By what?" Talia demanded. "By the first flame," the elder said. "By the origin of magic itself." Silence. Lyra stood frozen. "What does that mean?" "You are not simply gifted. You are a vessel. A spark carried through generations, waiting for the right soul to awaken." "Awaken what?" "The seed of balance. The magic that existed before war. Before elves and humans. Before separation." "You're saying I'm ancient?" "No," the elder said. "You are new. But what sleeps inside you is older than language." Talia's face was pale. "You said the first flame was a myth. Many myths are truths the world cannot bear." "What does it want?" Lyra asked. "To be felt," the elder said. "To be remembered." That night, Lyra didn't sleep. The dreams came again. Burning forests, a lake of stars, a woman with eyes made of fire whispering and a tongue that made Lyra's bones ache. She woke with sweat on her skin and her hands glowing. Not gold, not silver, a deep crimson, like embers. Talia sat beside her, awake, watching. "It's growing," Lyra said. "I feel it. I know." "Does it scare you?" "No, it scares me." "Then I'll hold you until it doesn't."
She did.
For hours. Until the light of dawn crept across the floor. Until Lyra's hands stopped shaking. But the feeling didn't leave. It grew stronger with every passing day. She touched the trees, and they bloomed too quickly. She stepped into the river, and it turned to steam. When she kissed Talia, the air sparked. One afternoon, during a training session, she lost control. A single spell meant to push a target back erupted into a shockwave that shattered the stone walls of the practice arena. No one was hurt, but no one spoke either. Not until Talia pulled her away and into the woods. "You have to stop holding it in," she said. "It's not safe. I'm trying to protect you. From yourself. From what I might become." "You are not a weapon," Talia said, grabbing her hands. "You are not your father. You are not some cursed heir. You are Lyra, and whatever is inside you, it is still yours." "Then help me," Lyra whispered. "Help me carry it." Always. They kissed like they were making a pact. And maybe they were. But that night, the forest cried. The animals fled. The wind turned bitter. And a shadow passed over the moon. The first flame had woken. And it had plans. The moon vanished. Not behind clouds, not behind storm, vanished. One heartbeat it hung in the sky like a silver eye, and the next it was gone, swallowed by a darkness that didn't come from the sky, but from something older, deeper, rising from the earth itself. The forest moaned. The trees curled inward. The animals screamed, and then went silent. And Lyra woke with her skin on fire. She wasn't burning, not really, but every nerve in her body lit up with something that wasn't pain, wasn't pleasure, wasn't anything she had a word for. Her eyes flew open. The ceiling above her spun. She sat up and saw it, her hands glowing again, brighter now, not crimson but white-hot, like metal fresh from the forge. She gasped, "Talia." And Talia was already there, dressed, armed, eyes wide but steady. "I felt it," she said, crossing the room. The whole forest did. "It hurts," Lyra whispered. "It wants out." "What does?" "I don't know. But it's not just magic anymore. It's alive." Talia reached for her and hissed. The heat of Lyra's skin scorched her fingertips. "Gods," she whispered. "You're not channeling it. You're becoming it. I can't stop it. Then we'll contain it." "What if it doesn't want to be contained?" "Then we'll convince it." That night, the elders gathered in the sacred grove. Flames burned in floating orbs. Roots twisted around the circle, pulsing like veins. Lyra stood in the center, trembling. Her body radiated heat. Her breath left steam in the air. "It is not corruption," the eldest said, "but convergence. Her soul has bonded with the first flame." "What does it want?" Talia asked. "It wants to remember what it is. And it's using her to do it." "Why her?" "Because she is empty of expectation. Because she was unloved. Unused. Unmade. She had space." "I'm not empty," Lyra said, voice shaking. "Not anymore." Talia stepped forward. "There must be a way to pull it back. To ground it." "There is," the elder said. "But it comes at a cost." "What cost?" "She must let it speak. Fully. Without resistance. But it may not leave her afterward. She may become something else." "Something dangerous?" Lyra asked. "Something no longer mortal." The words hung there, heavy as iron. "You'd still be you," Talia said, eyes locked on hers. "But different." "Would you still love me?"
"Yes."
"Even if I have to learn you all over again?" Lyra nodded. "Then let it happen." "Not here," the elder said. "It must be done at the heart fire, where the first flame first burned." "No one's been there in centuries," Talia said. "And for good reason." "Then it's time we return," Lyra whispered. The journey took 3 days. They crossed mountains, rivers, shadows. The forest grew strange the deeper they went. Trees with black bark, flowers that hummed, stones that bled. Talia never left her side. At night, they didn't sleep much. They clung to each other like anchors. They kissed like it might be the last time. Lyra burned hotter each day. Her eyes glowed even in sleep. On the 4th night, Talia kissed her and pulled away with tears in her eyes. "Don't go where I can't follow," she whispered. "I won't," Lyra said. "But if I do, call me back." At dawn, they reached it. The heart fire. A crater deep in the forest, filled with ashes that shimmered like gold. The trees bent away from it, terrified. The wind did not blow here. The ground was warm. "Step into it," the elder said. "Alone." Talia gripped her hand. "I'll be here. No matter what comes out of that fire, I will know you." Lyra nodded, then stepped forward. The heat didn't burn her. It welcomed her. She dropped to her knees in the ash. Her hands sank into it. Her breath caught. Her eyes rolled back. And then she screamed, not in pain, in release. Flame erupted from her chest, from her mouth. Her skin cracked with light. A voice filled the crater. Not hers, not human, but somehow still her. I remember. The fire rose like a wave. The trees howled. The ground split. And Lyra vanished inside it. Talia shouted, rushed forward, but the flames held her back. "Let me in," she screamed. "Let her choose," the elder said. "Let her return on her own." Inside the fire, Lyra floated. She saw visions of the beginning of magic, of a time before war, before fear. She saw women with stars for eyes and men who wept power. She saw the first spark, the first kiss, the first betrayal, and at the center, herself.
Small.
Afraid. Burning. "You are more," the voice said. "You are new. And ancient. And ready." "I don't want to be a weapon," Lyra whispered. "Then don't. I don't want to be empty. You are full. I just want her." Then return to her. The fire dimmed. The light faded. And Lyra opened her eyes. She stood in the ashes.
Whole.
Barefoot. Glowing faintly. Talia ran to her. Held her. Touched her face with both hands. "You came back. I never left. Are you still you?" "Yes," Lyra said. "But more." "What do you feel?" "Everything. And us. Still everything." They kissed. The ground cooled. The sky cleared. The forest exhaled. And somewhere deep beneath their feet, the first flame sighed and returned to sleep. But not fully. Not forever. Only just enough. And Lyra was no longer a question. She was an answer. The fire didn't leave her. It softened, settled, folded itself into her blood like it had always belonged there. But it didn't disappear. It watched from beneath her skin. It breathed with her. It pulsed when she touched the earth, when she spoke to the trees, when Talia kissed her. Every sensation was sharper now, every color brighter, every sound louder, every breath deeper. She didn't need sleep. She didn't need to eat. But she did it anyway, for the comfort of ritual, for the memory of being human. And for Talia, who refused to treat her like anything other than hers. The first few days were beautiful. They walked the forest again. Lyra's touch made flowers bloom out of season. She laughed more. She carried Talia through the trees like she weighed nothing. They made love by waterfalls, beneath glowing moss, between roots older than war. Lyra thought maybe she could survive like this. Maybe power didn't have to be a prison. But then the dreams returned. Not visions of the first flame. Not echoes of war. But dreams of silence. Of distance. Of Talia walking away. Of her own voice fading until she couldn't remember how it sounded. She began to wake in the middle of the night, cold despite the heat beneath her skin. She stared at Talia beside her, memorizing her face like she might forget it. And then she began to change. Slowly. She no longer left footprints. Animals avoided her. The trees bent for her, but didn't speak. She stood still too long once, and the shadows clung to her. "You're slipping," Talia said one evening, her hands cupping Lyra's face. "Into something I can't reach. I'm not doing it on purpose." "I know, but you have to fight it." "I am." "Then let me help." "I don't know how." They didn't touch that night. For the first time in weeks, Lyra slept alone. The next day, the council summoned her. Not to accuse.
To ask.
"What do we call you now?" One elder said gently. "You are not just princess. Not just flame. You are something else." "I'm still Lyra," she said. "Are you?" "Yes." "Then let us see her."
She tried. Gods, she tried.
But it was like speaking a language she'd forgotten. Her laughter felt hollow. Her smiles rehearsed. Only Talia seemed to remember who she was beneath the glow. And Talia looked tired. She trained harder, spoke less. Her eyes followed Lyra like she expected her to disappear. "Talk to me," Lyra begged one night. "I'm trying." "Then try harder." "What do you want me to say?" "Tell me you still love me." "I love you." "Say it like you believe I'm still me." "I don't know if you are." That broke her. The fire rose. The trees trembled. Talia flinched. and Lyra fled. She ran through the forest, past the old stones, past the sacred river, to the edge of the cliff where the stars always seemed closer. She stood there, shaking, glowing faintly alone. "I gave everything," she whispered. "I fought for them. For her. I burned for them. And now I'm losing the only thing I ever wanted." A voice answered her. Not the flame, not the gods. Her own.
Soft. Small.
"Then go back. Not as power, not as fire, as girl." She returned barefoot, cloaked in shadow, not magic. She entered their chambers without a sound. Talia stood at the window, armor discarded, shoulders bare. Lyra crossed the floor. "I miss you," she said. "You're right. I'm slipping. I feel like I'm made of light and ash and nothing holds me down anymore. But if I don't find a way back, I'll lose you. And I'd rather burn out than live without you." Talia turned slowly. Her eyes glistened. "Then let me anchor you." She touched Lyra's wrist, and the fire dulled. She kissed her neck, and the glow receded. She held her, and the girl returned. For that night, Lyra was only herself. No legend, no spark, just a woman in love.
And it was enough.
Until the messengers arrived. A storm wolf, panting, bloodied, bearing a sigil that hadn't been seen in centuries. A kingdom long thought extinct had risen. A queen long dead had returned. And she wanted Lyra. "The flame calls to her," the message read. "She claims you are hers." Talia tore it apart. "She'll never have you. She might not want me. She might want the power." "It's the same thing now, isn't it?" Lyra didn't answer. Because maybe it was. The invitation wasn't written in ink. It was carved in blood across the bark of an ancient tree that had stood for over 5,000 years. No one had ever dared mark it. Not until now. And the message was clear. The flame does not belong to one heart. It belongs to all. Come to the ruins of Sarah. Alone. Talia read it aloud, voice low, fury trembling beneath each word. Lyra stood beside her, silent, her fingers curling into fists as if trying to hold the fire back, as if trying to pretend it didn't stir at the sound of that name, Sarah. She'd heard it before. In her dreams. A place of stone and ash and memory. A temple built around the first flame, before it was lost to time. "This is a trap," Talia said, eyes blazing.
A taunt.
"Nothing more." "It's a calling," Lyra whispered. "You feel it. I feel her trying to steal you." "She isn't trying. She doesn't have to." "Don't say that. I mean, she doesn't have to take me. The flame, it wants to go." "Then fight it." "I've been fighting it since the day it woke." "Then keep fighting." But the truth was curling beneath Lyra's ribs like a serpent. The more she resisted the pull to Sarah, the more unstable her power became. Fire flickered beneath her skin during meals. Her hands burned through fabric without warning. Her dreams turned into visions of red skies and a woman with dark braids and glowing hands saying, "You were mine long before you were hers." "Who is she?" Lyra asked the elders. "Before Talia. Before me." "She was called the Ember Queen," the oldest said. "A warrior. A sorceress. A lover of the flame. She ruled a kingdom that should have lasted forever." "What happened?" "She tried to become the flame. Not its vessel. Its equal." "And did she?" "She disappeared." Lyra's heart thudded. "And now she's returned. The flame remembers her. That's dangerous." "Why?" "Because it remembers her name. But she may not remember yours." That night, Lyra didn't go to Talia. She walked through the forest alone, fingers grazing bark, eyes burning. The moon felt too close. The stars whispered too loudly. She stopped at the river, staring at her reflection. Her eyes weren't entirely hers anymore. Not always. Sometimes they shimmered like coals. Sometimes they dimmed like dusk. "I'm still me," she said aloud. The trees didn't answer. The flame didn't comfort. And when she returned, Talia was waiting. "Where were you?" she asked. "I needed to think. About her. About everything." "You're slipping again." "I know," Then let me hold you. It's not enough anymore. That broke something. Talia looked away. Her hands trembled. You said you'd always come back to me. I will. But what if this time, you don't know how? Lyra stepped closer. Then find me. What if I can't? Then remind me. Of what? That the flame doesn't get to choose my heart. I do.
They kissed.
It was desperate, hungry, full of fear and need and promises breaking under their own weight. Lyra pulled Talia down onto the bed, tangled in blankets and sighs and heat. She kissed her like it was a battle, and Talia kissed her like it was goodbye. At dawn, Lyra left. She rode alone, cloak pulled tight, magic humming like a song with no words. The path to Sarah wasn't mapped. It revealed itself to her. The forest parting, the roots guiding, the wind pushing her forward. And still, she hesitated. Every step away from Talia felt like tearing. But the power inside her surged with every mile. It wanted to go home. Sarah was not ruins. Not exactly. The stones still stood. Broken, blackened, but still humming with memory. And at the center of the circle, surrounded by flames that didn't burn, stood a woman. Taller than Lyra expected. Dark skin glowing with embers. Braids wrapped in gold. And eyes that saw everything. You came, she said. You called, Lyra answered. You carry my fire. It isn't yours. It was once. And now, it remembers me. And you do too. I don't. You will. The woman stepped closer. My name is Erin. I was the first vessel. The last queen of flame. Before you. I'm not a queen. You will be. If you stay. I have someone. You had someone. Before this. Before who you really are. I know who I am. You think you do. But you've only ever seen your reflection in someone else's eyes. That's not true. Then why do you burn more when you're away from her? Lyra couldn't answer. Erin lifted her hand. Let me show you. And she did. Visions poured through Lyra's mind, of a kingdom built from fire and truth, of power shared without fear, of a queen who ruled with flame in her veins and love in her heart. Erin hadn't been cruel. She had been complete. And Lyra felt like a missing piece finally clicking into place. You could be like me, Erin whispered. More than a vessel. More than a girl in love. I don't want to lose her. Then make her part of your fire. She won't come. Then choose.
Me.
Or her. Power. Or love. Lyra stood between the stones, heart splitting. And far away, back in the elven court, Talia stood at the edge of the window, watching the horizon, whispering, Please come back. Please remember me. Please don't let the fire take you. The wind at Sarah didn't move like normal wind. It curled inward, circling Lyra's body like it belonged to her. The stones hummed in time with her breath. The air shimmered with heat that never burned. Erin stood just beyond the flames, watching, waiting. You feel it, she said. The balance tipping. The part of you that remembers me. No, Lyra whispered. I don't remember you, but I remember her.
Talia.
Yes. That's not love, Erin said, stepping closer. That's comfort. She gave you safety. I can give you truth. She gave me myself.
No.
She gave you a version of yourself she could love. But I see all of you, even the parts you hide. Lyra's chest ached. The flame inside her pulsed harder, pushing against her ribs like it wanted to speak, to leap out, to rise. What if I can't go back, she whispered. What if the Lyra she loves doesn't exist anymore? Then become the one who doesn't need to be loved to be whole. But I want to be loved. And I want to burn, Erin said, voice soft. We don't always get what we want. Lyra looked down at her hands. No longer soft. No longer human. Power shimmered beneath her skin, molten and shifting. The girl who once trembled in the rain was gone. In her place stood something more. But was it better? Or just different? If I stay, she asked, what happens to me? You become the next flame bearer, the next queen, not of one forest, of all magic, all realms. The first flame will no longer just live in you, it will be you. And if I leave, you may never control it again. Then it controls me? Only if you let it. The temptation was a living thing. It whispered in her ear. It tasted like certainty, like permanence. No more fear, no more doubt, no more hiding. But it didn't smell like Talia, and it didn't feel like home. Why now? Lyra asked. Why appear after all this time? Because you called me, Aaron said. Not with your voice, with your power, with your fear. I wasn't afraid of you. You were afraid of being too much, and not enough. I am the answer to both. Lyra took a breath, closed her eyes,
And saw her. Talia.
standing in the palace gardens, sword forgotten at her side, hair braided by moonlight, face tilted toward the stars. Waiting,
Hoping.
loving. She doesn't need me to be a god, Lyra whispered. She just needs me to come home. And will you? Aaron asked. Or will you stay and become more than mortal? Lyra turned to her. You want me to choose between power and love. But I can't, because if I lose her, then the fire means nothing. Aaron stepped forward. The flames between them parted like a curtain. She cupped Lyra's face with glowing fingers. You were mine once, she said, and you could be again. I was never anyone's, Lyra said. Not truly, not even hers. But she never tried to possess me. She just stood beside me. And you think that's enough? It's everything. And with that, Lyra pulled away. The flames resisted. Her blood screamed. The first flame surged in protest. But she ran. Through fire. Through time. Through memory. Back. Toward the woman who never stopped choosing her. Talia stood at the edge of the forest, armor loose, cloak torn, eyes wild. She felt her before she saw her. Felt the heat on the wind, the tremor in the soil. And then Lyra appeared, breathless, glowing, broken open. I came back, she said. I remembered you. Talia didn't speak. She crossed the space between them and kissed her. Hard.
Fierce.
Terrified. Don't leave me again, she whispered against her lips. Not for anyone. Not even for the gods. Never, Lyra said. I don't want to be a goddess. I want to be yours. And then the fire rose again. Not from anger. Not from magic.
From choice.
From promise. Lyra's power poured outward, but instead of destruction, it became warmth.
Light.
Life. The trees bloomed. The roots pulsed. And the flames settled, not to consume, but to serve.
To belong.
You chose love, a voice said behind her. Aaron stood at the forest's edge, watching. Not angry, almost proud. Does it hurt? Lyra asked. No, Aaron said, because it means the flame is finally where it wants to be. In someone who remembers that power means nothing without heart. Then she vanished. The forest quieted, and Lyra turned to Talia. I need you, she said. I always will. Then take me, Talia whispered. All of me. No more fear. They didn't speak again. They walked hand in hand into the palace, into the bed they shared, into the future they nearly lost. And that night, Lyra didn't dream of flame or queens or gods. She only dreamed of fingers in her hair, of lips on her shoulder, of the steady, irreplaceable truth of a heart that never stopped calling her home. Peace, when it came, didn't arrive like thunder or war drums. It came like sunrise, slow, inevitable, golden. The world kept spinning. The forest healed. And Lyra, for the first time in her life, wasn't running from anything. Not from her father. Not from her power. Not from herself. She sat on the edge of the queen's terrace, feet bare, hair loose, wrapped in Talia's cloak, and watched the trees sway below as morning light spilled across the horizon. Talia approached from behind, arms sliding around her waist, chin resting on her shoulder. You're awake early, she murmured. Couldn't sleep. Nightmares.
No.
Just too full. Of fire. Of you. Talia smiled against her skin.
You feel steady, she said.
You feel like mine again. I was always yours, Lyra said. Even when I forgot. You didn't forget. You got lost. There's a difference. Thank you for finding me. Thank you for coming back. The palace was quiet. The elves were cautious but kind. Word of Lyra's choice had spread across the realms. How she had walked away from godhood for love. How she had returned not just with the flame, but with balance. She wasn't feared anymore. She was honored. Not worshipped, not obeyed, but trusted. The kind of trust earned through pain and return. She spent her days rebuilding what had been broken, learning the deeper magic of the forest, not the kind that burned, but the kind that healed. She worked beside Talia, not under her. They made decisions together. They touched often, small things, soft things, hands brushing under tables, fingers linked in meetings, kisses stolen behind woven curtains. At night, they lay in each other's arms and pretended the world outside didn't exist. Sometimes Lyra woke glowing, the flame still pulsing in her veins. But Talia didn't pull away. She touched her gently and whispered her name, over and over, until the fire dimmed, until Lyra came back to herself, until the only heat between them was the kind they chose. One evening, as the wind carried the scent of summer berries and the stars bled silver into the sky, Talia led Lyra into the ancient grove. Do you remember this place? She asked. It's where you first kissed me, Lyra said. It's where I first wanted to kiss you, Talia corrected. And I wanted you to. I want you still. Always. In the center of the grove, the roots had risen naturally into an arch, like the forest itself had grown it for them. A symbol. A doorway. What is this? Lyra whispered. A union, Talia said. Not a crown. Not a throne.
Just you and me.
Choosing. Every day. Every breath. Lyra blinked. Is this a proposal? I didn't think I needed one, Talia said. But yes, if you want it to be. I do. Already. I've said yes to harder things. Let me say yes to something that feels like home. They stepped beneath the arch. The forest hummed. The wind sang. And though there was no priest, no ceremony, no ritual, something old and powerful and alive wrapped around them and sealed their promise in silence and light.
They kissed.
And the flame burned gold. That night, Lyra didn't sleep. She lay on her side, watching Talia breathe. Her chest rose and fell like a tide. Her brow furrowed in dreams. Lyra reached for her and whispered, I would do it all again. Even the pain. Even the fire. If it means this. Talia stirred. What? Nothing. Liar. Just thinking.
About what?
How strange it is, Lyra said, that I had to become something not human to finally feel human. You're not human, Talia said. You're not elven either. You're something else. Does that scare you?
No.
It makes me want to know every version of you. As you change. As you burn. As you become. You're not afraid I'll disappear? Not as long as you remember me. Lyra pressed their foreheads together. You're the only thing I never forgot. Months passed. Seasons turned. The flame remained. But it didn't consume. It guided. Lyra used it to grow things, gardens, orchards, healing springs. She taught young warriors how to wield power with heart, not hate. She helped rebuild the bridges between elves and humans, though her father never spoke again. He remained imprisoned.
Silent.
Forgotten. She didn't visit.
She didn't need to.
Some wounds don't need closure. They just need to stop bleeding. One day, a child asked her, Are you a goddess? And Lyra laughed.
No, she said.
I'm just someone who came home. To the forest? To her. And when Talia arrived minutes later, brushing ash from her sleeves, eyes fierce and soft all at once, Lyra rose and pulled her close and whispered, It's still you. Every day. Every breath.
Still you.
Talia smiled. And you, she said. Forever. And for once, forever didn't feel like a curse. It felt like a promise. The kind you never want to stop keeping. And so they did.
Keep it.
Every morning. Every night. In every flame that flickered between their fingers.